and welcome back to Rainbow Roundtable. I'm your host, Frank Sanchez, and we're here to delve into a compelling issue facing today's educational landscapes. Misinformation. Specifically, we'll be examining the intersection of misinformation, the teaching of history, and LGBTQ plus issues. We have a remarkable panel of experts, educators, and students who are at the forefront of tackling these challenges.
Why is this so important? We're in an age where information is at our fingertips, but discerning fact from fiction has never been more vital, especially for our educators, who are charged with preparing the next generation to navigate this complex world with critical thinking skills. So let's dive into what's coming up on today's show.
In the first segment, we'll take a journey back in time to understand the roots of misinformation, particularly as it relates to the teaching of history and LGBTQ plus issues. From the erasure of significant LGBTQ plus figures to the denial or revision of key events, this is a new battle. We'll discuss landmark moments that have shaped the trajectory of these issues and provide a historical framework to better understand challenges.
As we move into the heart of our episode, we won't be sharing specific real-world stories, but rather we'll imagine fictional scenarios that represent the very real challenges faced by teachers and students in Florida. Picture this: a classroom where a teacher is wrestling with how to balance state mandates that aim to control information while also providing an accurate and inclusive account of history, or consider students collaborating to question and debunk conspiracy theories, especially those that target the LGBTQ plus community. These imagined yet realistic stories give us a lens through which we can discuss on-the-ground issues educators and students face daily.
In this segment, our panelists will offer concrete tools and strategies to design to counter misinformation and to foster more inclusive educational environment. From role-playing exercises that demystify mechanics of misinformation to using open-source educational materials that provide multiple perspectives, there's a lot to gain here. We'll talk about how these can adapt to address the unique needs and challenges of LGBTQ plus students as well.
As we wrap up, we'll engage in a future-oriented discussion, the issue of misinformation, especially as it impacts the teaching of history and LGBTQ plus issues, isn't going away overnight. But there are glimmers of hope. In this segment, we'll explore possible future scenarios where schools and teachers adapt, policy changes are made, and students become more empowered and discerning consumers of information. Now, to help us understand the complexities of what Florida teachers and students face over LGBTQ plus issues, today we draw on a large variety of talent and experiences and representation. First, this is Frank Sanchez, a teacher and Safe Schools board member. He is my anchor partner today of Safe Schools Rainbow Roundtable. Welcome, Frank.
Hi, Liz. How are you?
Hi, Frank. Good, and you?
I'm good.
Now, let's welcome Vivian Diaz. Vivian is a proud Miami-Dade County Public Schools alumni and mom of two current students. She is deeply involved in school life, dedicated to fostering inclusivity for all. Welcome, Vivian.
Well, thank you guys so much for having me, Frank and Liz. I'm very honored to be here.
We are very happy to have you.
Thank you.
Next, let's add the perspective of a journalist. This is Hatzel Vela, respected Emmy Award-winning journalist at WPLG Television ABC Local 10. He specializes in education, Latin America, and Cuba. In January 2017, Hatzel became the first local television journalist in the country to move to Cuba and cover the island from the inside. Welcome, Hatzel.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm glad to be here.
Very happy to have you here. Next, welcome the streaming television host, Tiffany Williams. She hosts Tiffany Explains It All for Safe Schools. Welcome, Tiffany.
Hi, Liz. I'm so looking forward to the discussions today.
I am too. So happy to have you, Tiffany. Next, let's welcome Harold Marrero. He is the Chief Operating Officer of Safe Schools and Executive Producer for Safe Schools Rainbow Roundtable. Welcome, Harold.
Hi, Liz and Frank. Thank you for having me on today, and I'm very excited for the conversations that we're going to have.
We're very happy to have you here, Harold. Thank you for everything.
Glad to have you.
Yeah.
And finally, let's welcome Liz Morales. Liz has been an educator for Dade County's public schools for the past 17 years and has served as the GSA sponsor for the past 14 years. Liz is a trombonist for the South Florida Pride Concert Band, where she has also served as a youth trombone coach. Liz is Vice Chair of Safe School South Florida on the Board of Directors and my co-anchor for today's Safe School Rainbow Roundtable. Welcome, Liz.
Thank you.
Thank you, panelists, for these fantastic introductions. It is clear that we have a wealth of experience and diverse perspectives here today. Now let's bring in the issues closer to home and consider how misinformation and misinformation around LGBTQ plus students issues play out in our day-to-day lives, particularly in educational settings.
For the purpose of today's discussion, let's imagine we're in a classroom in Florida, a state where the educational system is grappling with how history is taught, especially when it comes to LGBTQ plus issues. Think of a fictional high school where a group of students discover that a key LGBTQ plus figure like Harvey Milk is conspicuously absent from their history books. In another classroom, let's imagine a teacher striving to discuss the impact of LGBTQ plus folks in politics, but being constrained by state guidelines that discourage or outright ban the discussion of LGBTQ plus experiences in a favorable light.
And it's not just history classes. Think about sex education as well. Students in our imagined school may be subjected to a curriculum that erases the experiences and needs of the LGBTQ plus youth, providing no information on safe sex practices or sexual orientation. Here, misinformation becomes a sin of omission and impacts that can be dangerous, leaving students uninformed and unsupported.
In these fictional, but unfortunately plausible scenarios, how do students and teachers navigate the minefield? Perhaps our teacher, bound by the limitations of state syllabus, employs creativity, encouraging students to independently research and present on LGBTQ plus figures. Meanwhile, the students form an underground history club that examines the topics the school won't cover, disseminating their findings through art, signs, or social media. They may use technology to create safe spaces for discussion and work collectively to question conspiracy theories and misinformation in general about LGBTQ plus topics.
This creative resilience in the face of systemic barriers serves as a testament to the indomitable spirit of inquiry and truth-seeking that educational should foster, while specific fictional and struggle is real for many across the nation. So panelists, let's consider, what are some of the ways teachers can still foster inclusive and accurate understanding of LGBTQ history and issues when the educational system may discourage it? How can students themselves become agents of change, challenging the status quo and misinformation regarding LGBTQ plus topics? I can't wait to hear your insights on these deeply important issues over to our panel.
I can say, I'm sorry. I have a very good friend of mine who is a teacher, and they were talking to me about this history because I reached out to them and I was like, I just want to know what you do in your classroom to make sure, because they're a high school teacher. And they were telling me that one of the strategies that they use is that they personally cannot use preferred pronouns, but they will not and will let the students, that doesn't affect the students being able to call themselves by their own pronouns. So that's something that's actively encouraged in their classroom. They actively discourage using specific pronouns or calling students by whatever their assigned name is. Just say things like "great job," and calling not calling students individually, so that, to avoid having to perhaps dead name a student or refer them by their non-preferred pronouns. And they'll let their students use their preferred name on any assignment or stickers or anything like that. Just tiny little acts to make sure that these students know that they can feel comfortable in their classroom. Something as simple as putting a sticker somewhere subtle, putting a magnet so that they know that they are in an environment with someone that will, help them, that will nurture them, that will, make sure that they have a safe space. So I think, I leave it over to you two, since you two are the ones on the front line, and and you speak to a lot of educational.
I think at the basis of it is clubs and the ability to form clubs and to organize. From what I understand, that's still federally protected in schools, and so that I think is key because students can really associate with people who they have similar beliefs with, whatever the issue is, whether it's queer rights or anything else that Hispanic heritage or whatever it is. I think that's key. I mean, I remember back to when I was in high school, student government was a key at my high school at Core Park. And I think it fostered this ability for all of us to sort of come together, no matter what your background is, and to have a dialogue about your backgrounds, about your sexual orientation, about different things that were affecting us as kids. I think that's still the case, and hopefully I think it continues to foster the ability for kids in the classroom to express themselves.
Yeah, and one of the issues that we're facing right now is that the state is passing laws that are requiring kids to have permission slips for them to take home in order to join certain after-school clubs. Which we know what they're doing it. They're doing it because they don't want, they want the kids to go home and like, oh, I want to join GSA. It's like, well, what's GSA? Gay Straight Alliance. It's like, why do you want to join Gay Straight Alliance? Like, parents will usually just ignore what the straight and just look at the gay. But the way that I look at it from a different perspective. When I also went to Core Park, and there's 4 Core Park people here in this room right now. So that's a lot of go Rams. From when I was at Core Park, one of the clubs that I joined was the Bible Club. And I remember that there were people in the Bible Club that came from houses that were not religious. That one of the people that I was with came from an atheist household. And I just think about that person having to go home and give a permission slip saying, I want to join the Bible Club. And it's like, why do they have to do that? It's an after-school club run by students with the support of a teacher. Like, how that infringes on their right to do something when it comes to their religion. So it goes into their religious freedom. So everybody talking about parental rights and looking at the queer element, but there are all these other elements that they're ignoring, and this law just really impedes students from being their true self, their authentic selves in the schools, and I find that really problematic. So because the Bible Club is allowed, gay straight alliances are allowed. Right.
They're federally protected programs. And I think that is one way that students can use and teachers can use to get information out about queer history and about what is going on. Because these are extracurricular clubs. So they don't fall under the educational setting. So as a teacher, I cannot talk about Harvey Milk or Sylvia Rivera, or Marsha P. Washington, or any of or any of our other queer heroes. But through the GSA, they can do that. We can do that, and we can have different activities, and we can discuss those topics in that club. So that's one way that you can do it. But then that would mean that the student feels comfortable enough to join the club.
Right.
Yeah.
And not every student is ready to come out or ready to participate in the club. So then those that are not ready miss out on that history.
Yeah.
And that's a shame.
Yeah, I mean, I was one of those. I remember going by your class and looking in, just like, what are they doing? What is the GSA doing? I want to be part of that, but I wasn't out in high school, so it was really hard for me. And I know that there was the straight element to it, but I just felt like if I were to join, a GSA, my friends would be like, why are you joining GSA? And I just didn't want to deal with that. But that's totally true. Kids that don't join are missing out on a lot of information, and particularly, I want to talk about a little bit about the sexual education in high school, because we had some of that. I remember we used to be taken to the auditorium, right?
Yes.
And they used to give this presentation.
They gave a presentation in the auditorium, and then we had also I think a health class.
Health class, yes, with Mr.
Well,
yeah.
I know that. I don't know if it's still there, but we used to have to give 5 hours of AIDS and HIV education to our students, so they would know, and it would be very basic stuff. We would talk about ways to prevent it, how do you get it, to counteract all those misinformation that was happening in the 80s. So like in the 90s and 2000s, this was the thing. This was passed by the district. They gave us a curriculum, and they said, hey, you can do this. Mm-hmm. Nowadays, sex education is really not a thing. And whenever we did have sex education, queer sex was not.
No,
it was always heteronormative perspective, and it was never talked about that. Even though the people who were mostly affected by the HIV and AIDS epidemic were were gay kids.
And I remember all of these misinformation that was happening, even in our high schools, that all of a sudden, like, Braddock was the school with the most HIV cases.
Oh, yes.
And that was like, and people in corporate were like, oh my gosh, Braddock has the most HIV cases. And you would just hear these crazy claims.
Stories, and you wouldn't even know where they came from. It was just all these like rumors spreading like wildfire. And all you could do was just be like, I mean, that sounds weird, but what way do you have to verify any of that?
There was all rumors. There was no data.
Right.
How many kids in high school have HIV and what? So there was never that. But it's just misinformation and all.
Yeah, just fear mongering, so that people would be scared of like, oh my God, all those kids, like, and it was just so like looking back, it was so absurd. And I remember when I was in the newspaper in my school. And I wrote an op-ed back in like 2003, my junior year of high school, about like in support of gay marriage, and that was like a huge thing that I wrote in the opinion, and I have it to this day. And I mean, and just to have, and the thing that makes me sad now is that I don't think a kid would feel comfortable doing that in a high school today.
Yeah.
You know, that they wouldn't feel comfortable. Not maybe the newspaper doesn't exist anymore, but to like put themselves out there in some sort of like in a media thing, like the TV or like the channels that you would have to get the news, or the newspaper that we would have an opinion page. Like, that's what breaks my heart, that back in 2003, I felt confident and comfortable enough to do something like that, but I don't feel like there would be that same level of ability for a kid today to do it, because they would have that fear mongering that's gotten worse instead of getting better, Yeah,
we were doing such crazy things in the newspaper, because I was in the newspaper with Vivian. I remember we had a test whether you were metrosexual or not.
Yes.
And that was so wild. And I took the newspaper home I was working on it, so I took it home. And my dad saw it, and he's like, what is this? What is this gay stuff? I'm like, metrosexual is not gay. Like, it just means that you're a straight guy that likes to like look good. It's gay light. Yeah, it's gay light.
Diet gay.
But it was such a wild time to have grown up in that time, that we were just allowed to write whatever we wanted and explore whatever we wanted. And of course, our teachers were really like strict on us and fact checking us. I once did I got a quote from Kate Beckinsale, which was the actress. And I got a quote from my friend, but he didn't really say the quote. It's just my friend said the quote, and Miss Mueller came down on me. She's like, he didn't say this. I went to ask him. She said, did you say this quote? And he's like, no. She's like, so then I got in trouble. So she's like, you can't write for the next like month or so. I'm like,
you're
banned.
You're banned.
Yeah. I mean, hearing these stories, and it's just like, again, different time periods, because when gay marriage was legalized in the U.S., is around the time that I was finishing high school. So it's really interesting. Yes, there is not as much like freedom of like expression or like getting to just openly talk about stuff. But because of that, the internet kind of like changed that, because people started becoming more conservative about certain topics. So then if you weren't talking about it at school, you could talk about it online in group and live chats or Discords.
Yeah.
And now we're at a point where we're trying to like bring back those discussions in person in the classrooms, and we're trying to like, not right wrongs, but like basically being like, okay, we're now like this veil that people wanted to put over the subject, and now we're trying to take the veil off, and people who don't want the veil to be lifted, they're like, no, you shouldn't know about this. But it's like, knowledge is so powerful, and it's like, wouldn't you want to know all these things so that you can make a better future for yourself and for the people that haven't even come like before you? It's just like, it's really fascinating, because it's like, I hear about things that happened in the early 2000s, and I'm like, I was too young to experience any of that. But being a teenager in the 2010s, it's like I got to see like that transition of like the internet. I grew up with the internet, and it's really fascinating, because I hear a lot of older generations be like, oh, but social media, like there's a lot of like, yes, I do agree that there can be a lot of misinformation online, of course. But look, how many books have misinformation? How many books have been like written by people who were just like totally just changing the narrative completely? And it's like, that wasn't actually factual. Like, that never happened.
Mm-hmm.
Or people just basically saying like, finding out like informations that like during the Holocaust, like a lot of educational books on gay rights, trans, like Germany was such a hub center at the time before all that happened for queer people. And then all these books that were written during that time all got destroyed because of one person basically saying like, I don't want to talk about this, and so I'm going to just erase it. And I know a lot of younger people that are like, I wish we had those like access to those books. It's like, but we do, because we have the people that actually survived and get to talk and like, you know, express like what they went through and basically their experiences. And it's like, I feel like a lot of people see social media and it's either like you're all the way in or you're kind of like, oh, I don't really know, like I don't really agree with that. But it's like that's where we have now more of an open discussion online. And especially with GSA clubs, like, you know, again, I do understand there are some students that, you know, do want to come out but they can't. Maybe they're in situations where they can't, you know, do those type of things. But you have a group of kids that maybe are a part of GSA and maybe they can create an online like chat room, and then that will encourage the ones who are, you know, not coming out, but they know that there's a safe space where they could express their, you know, opinions and what they're going through, because it's a different perspective, but they're still part of like that group,
a small community.
A small community.
It starts small and it can just get bigger and bigger. You know, that's all we can hope for.
We talk about creative ways to include ourselves. Recently, the Miami-Dade County School Board voted no on teaching or including LGBTQ history and recognizing October as LGBTQ History Awareness Month. So one of the things before, they would, every year it was passed. It was passed without a problem. It was great. And then they would send us a list of 30 queer heroes to highlight. And, you know, I, as the GSA sponsor, I would assign one to each of my kids, and then it would be kind of read in the morning, you know, how this is a queer hero for today. And they would read the person's biography. Well, we can't no longer do it on the news, but the kids will still do the queer history, and we'll just put it on a bulletin board. And so it's there, it's just not as loud as it used to be. And that's where we're stuck at now.
Yeah, it's like the bare minimum, just like it's there. They can go see it.
So
but
the students can go and they can check out the queer history person of the day, but that's it. And it's sad, but at least we're there. And it's just sad. That's where we're at. We used to have a very supportive school board where some of the members that were voting yes are now voting no.
Yeah.
And it's all because of what's happening in Tallahassee.
Yeah.
And teachers are afraid to. A lot of teachers are afraid to go against grade because it's their job.
Right.
So.
Sorry.
No, go for it.
It's sad because I'm a GSA sponsor and I see the kids, they're scared. They're scared to join the club. That's why, like, the first day of school, I'm like, this is a safe space. And I introduce myself as their teacher, but also as the Gay Straight Alliance sponsor and the Future Educators of America. So I have two different clubs, and they're like, did you say gay? I'm like, I sure did. I said straight. So I invite them to join, like, to earn community service hours and also to learn. But I obviously can't talk about that in class.
Yeah.
So what grade level is this?
I teach 9th grade now.
Okay.
Yeah, and then I have, yes, and then I can tell, I'm not judging my students, but I can tell that they're like super excited, the ones that are like, oh my God, she's a GSA sponsor, you know, so they feel better. And I invite everybody to the meeting, so then we have Club Rush coming up next week. That's when kids start signing up. I'm like, if you guys are interested, sign up during lunchtime. And then when Frank just said that, like, at least there's a little corner of where people learn about the history, but it's sad that it's just that they can go there, but because in my school, it was the same thing. They would announce it, you know, they would have like at least a little bio, paragraph, information, whatever, but now like, you can't
Have you
do
seen
that.
interest wane in terms of people wanting to join GSA?
Some kids, but then kids have approached me like, oh, this kid is scared to join. I'm like, don't tell him not to be scared. Just sign up next week, you know? So we'll see. I mean, when we meet again, I guess we can discuss that because I won't know until.
But you haven't seen membership drop in the past 2
A lot
years.
of my kids have graduated, and then after the Don't Say Gay bill, kids stopped showing up, to tell you the truth.
I haven't. Like, my school has always had a very, I've been sponsored since almost 20 years, and we were a very small club. Like, there were this many people in the club 20 years ago. And now my club had about 40, 50 kids in the club, and it was great and wonderful.
It's Coral Park.
Coral Park is
Yeah.
always been very gay. Coral Park, yeah.
And we participated in the walkout right before the vote for Don't Say Gay bill. We had a walkout. It was supported by administration, and it was and it was great. I haven't seen last year. There wasn't a big drop. We'll see this year what happens. I mean, I'm not expecting it, but I'll find out because we also have Club Rush in the next couple of weeks. And to be clear, the club is just a safe space for kids to hang out. And we do a lot of community service. We participate in suicide awareness walks. We participate in breast cancer walks. We do toy drives. We do all these community services. So it's not like we're sitting there and always talking about gay issues and what are you doing? And we're not like discussing, anything that's inappropriate. It's a school, but it's there for a place to gather and for like-minded kids to feel like, okay, this is my family. This is my little, flock of brothers stick together. Okay, I feel safe here. And that's what GSA means in my school at Coral Park. It's just anybody's welcome. Anybody's welcome, and we don't. I never ask. Like, are you gay? Are you straight? Bisexual? Are you pan? It's just like, you're here. Great, thanks. Just come on. You
mean you're not pushing the gay agenda on the whole school?
I have enough toasters.
Okay.
So I don't need any more recruits.
Got it.
And I want to thank both of you for making me feel old. I graduated in 2005 and 2005. I was sponsored there, and so thanks.
Well, you made an impact because I've always remembered you.
Well, thank you. Yes.